Hi everyone, it's Bob Pulver again from Elevate Your AIQ. We are on site at HR Tech 2025, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Caitlin Macgregor from Plum. How you doing today, Caitlin?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. We seem to already be of like mind when it comes to some of these topics around hiring for skills and potential, and what are those skills that we should be looking for. So excited to dig in. Why don't we just start with you giving a brief introduction about yourself and the impetus for starting.
So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plum. We started 13 years ago after I built two businesses for other people. And it was in the second business, I was running an educational software company for students with learning disabilities. And we went to make our first hire, and my executive coach said that if we were to screw that up, it'd be a loss of $300,000 on the business. So not wanting to make that mistake, I ended up using a psychometric assessment, so a behavioral and cognitive assessment on all 80 applicants that applied for the position. And two candidates stood out for completely different reasons. One that was perfect on paper and but had low assessment scores, and then one that scored in the top third percentile for overall productivity. And my executive coach said I'd be an idiot not to hire the person with the highest scores. Statistically, she was 1 in 1,000. So we ran an experiment, hired the guy who was perfect on paper, hired the person with the highest assessment scores. 3 months in, the guy was only doing 10% of his work. So he was let go. And the woman, she was doing all of his work plus hers. And she replaced me as acting president within a year and a half when I went on maternity leave.
Wow.
And the punchline is she had 2 art degrees, and her only work experience was 7 years of waitressing, and she didn't know how to use Excel. So if I had relied on a resume, there's no way I would have shortlisted her to interview her, let alone hire her. And so after spending 3 years of hiring all these diamonds in the rough, my co-founder and I realized we kind of felt almost like a calling. Like in order to be successful as business owners, we needed to be able to have this objective data on everyone. And we couldn't understand how anybody could possibly hire and be successful in their business without this data. And we saw an opportunity to take it out of the hands of really expensive consultants and democratize access to this highly predictive data by turning it into software as a service. So we set out to build best-in-class industrial organizational psychology with the best user experience and the most scalability, so you could match every person to every role into jobs that they'd be happy filled and excel in.
Wow. I love it. And I am so impressed with all the ways in which you've enhanced the platform. Yesterday, you just accepted an award, the HR Technology of the Year.
Top Product of the Year award at HR Tech. This was the most competitive year that they ever had because every vendor has a new AI solution.
Mhm.
And this is actually the second time we won it. So we won it in 2022 for leadership potential. And then we won it on Monday for what we call role model, which is basically the behavioral benchmark that predicts success for every role. We've been able to take it from a 8-minute process down to an instant process. And so really a great honor. And most companies that get awarded it are like a very large company like a Workday or a UKG, or so to be at the table with these giants was just incredible.
Well, I think there's a tremendous innovation coming from a lot of younger, smaller companies, and that's what makes this ecosystem so interesting. So talk to me about role model and how it fits in. Is this only on the sort of pre-hire side, or is it applicable inside
It's
talent
inside
management?
as well. So our product really has two areas. One is Plum for hiring, which is talent acquisition,
Mhm.
and then Plum for employees, which is talent management. And it doesn't matter what part of the product, talent acquisition or talent management, that you're thinking about, we have a 3-step process, and it's how our technology powers everything. And the first step, it doesn't matter if you're a candidate or an employee, you complete your one-time Plum profile, and it's free for anybody to take. It's 20, 25 minutes on time, personality, cognitive ability. And when you're done, you get your whole report that's robust and tells you what drives you and what drains you and gives you suggestions for your development. So that's our first step. The second step is what we call a match criteria. It's the criteria that predicts success for any role, and it could be for hiring or it could be for internal mobility. It could be for pipelining, for succession planning, or development. And so in the past, in order to figure out which behaviors predict success in a role, it would require 3 to 8 internal subject matter experts to complete an 8-minute survey, narrowing down which behaviors are job relevant, which behaviors are most important and least important. And basically, I like to think about it like KPIs, key performance indicators, which behaviors are most important, and the rest is not job relevant. And so that 8 minutes would narrow it down. What we're able to do now is with a job description. So let's say you have a business analyst role, you enter the job title, and then you enter in the job description. And what we're able to do is match that job description to ONET, which is the US labor market database that has complete, compliant, robust, unbiased job descriptions. And the AI will compare your good or not so good job description to ONET. And then from ONET, we've been able to basically have subject matter experts go through and say these, complete the match criteria survey so that it says these are the behaviors that are job relevant. And that ends up being a contribution. So if you're like, okay, I have a business analyst, these are the behaviors that are needed for success. It's defensible, it's compliant, it's non-biased, and I'm ready to now match step 3. Every person, every employee, every candidate can now be matched to that profile. And you have a 99 match and a 33 match. But if you want to further refine that second step beyond the automated role model and add in your company culture or your leadership framework, or you want to add in those subject matter experts and have them take the 8 minutes, those all can then further customize and refine that role to your needs. So you can either instantly go with what the job description came back with, or you can further customize. That's something really unique in the market, and it allows people to then be matched to jobs based on the data that predicts future performance and retention. So that's what's kind of missing from the conversation is the importance of behaviors. You can quickly learn the hard skills, which we're now calling perishable skills, quickly on the job, and they're constantly changing. But those durable skills, those innate talents, that's what predicts performance as people change jobs, learn new things, and it may take a little bit of onboarding and a little bit on the job training, but this will predict long term if they will excel and outperform their peers.
Wow. No, that sounds really powerful. So how would this obviate the need for an employer to have any kind of separate like rubric to match against, or does it get embedded into that and then you can
Yeah.
to that?
I mean, you're going to get a match score right away talking about that behavioral fit. We also have an experience match, which is bare minimum data of if you need somebody in finance and they've never had any finance experience, maybe,
Sure.
it doesn't matter that they're a 99 match. So we have some bare minimum experience data. What we're really trying to get to is that short list. I mean, we just hired a customer success manager and we had 1,000 people apply. And there was one person in the entire group of 1,000 that was the right fit. They were a 96 match. And then when we went into the experience data and we went and looked at the other information, maybe 10 move forward for an interview, which is we have structured interview questions based on those behaviors that are job relevant. But we're just trying to get to that quick short list so that you can then check, do they have the bare minimum requirements to then warrant that conversation, and then ensuring that we're having that structured interview. And that's where the scoring, that's where the other elements are incredibly important, which are included in our platform.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. The responsible AI angle, I think, is really important for people to
Really important.
appreciate, especially when you start talking about, scores or, other systems that may do some type of stack ranking or whatever. It's important that we stay human centric and we let humans, ultimately make the decisions and not,
Agreed.
just put some weight, obviously, on what the algorithm has told you. I mean, that's why it's there, but it's part of an overall the criteria and attributes that you think about as you're evaluating. So kudos for being transparent and getting that
Thank
done.
you.
And
We're really grateful for some of the laws that have come into effect in New York and California, and we see them growing in a lot of other places where they mandate that companies do a third party bias audit and that they publish those results.
Yeah.
So we've been publishing our results for the last couple of years, and I'm surprised at how few companies do it. Like, it's mandatory by law, so I don't
Yeah.
understand how they're not publishing them, but it really shows that we are ensuring that there's no adverse impact. I mean, we designed this from day one, following best practices for industrial organizational psychology, because we wanted to be able to go up against legacy assessments like SHL and Hogan. We wanted enterprises like large banks to be able to feel confident. And a lot of our buyers at the enterprise level have PhDs in industrial organizational psychology. So we've always had to ensure that we have that defensibility and accuracy and validation. And then with the laws coming up, it's just another way of then saying, okay, you don't just have to look at our 38 validation studies or our 150-page scientific technical manual. Here's also a third party that's ensured that we've designed this to be as inclusive as possible and ensure that there's no adverse impact. And so it really does help differentiate, and it definitely is an important bar that companies need to surpass. And I'm not always seeing it, but it's a core value for us. And on the accessibility side too, like having run a company to help students with learning disabilities before this, like we went into this from day one being like, this is about people's potential and matching them to roles where they're going to succeed. So this has to include everybody. And our goal beyond the science was we wanted a user experience so that the person got value. They own their own profile. They are the first person that benefits from their own data, and it helps them throughout their career. And then they can give permission to various employers. And we didn't want them to retake different assessments. Like, we were like, how do we honor the person and support them as much as possible, be a candidate or an employee? And that's also been a kind of a key pillar that ensures, that we're using AI to help personalize the experience, to help the technology speed up based on the best practices we've already put in place, but that it's really just there to enhance and support the human.
Yeah. I think that when it comes to, whether you have a carrot or a stick to motivate people in terms of being responsible by design, I do think it's a differentiator for a while. And I feel like even though you have this patchwork of legislation, you do have some targets to sort of align yourself with, right? Whether that's, being as risk averse as possible and as careful as possible, and aligning yourself with the EU AI Act, or upcoming California legislation or whatever it is. But in some ways, you've got to think about what's going to be your continuous monitoring kind of approach, because models change, technology changes. Agentic could be sending data to various other tools, and so I think, just like we've done with data privacy and cybersecurity, I think you just need to sort of blanket it in a way. And then there's a reputational risk, frankly, if you're not being transparent. If you're, a startup in this space and you don't have something right in the header and footer of your site that talks about not just your, SOC 2 compliance and whatever, but as you have done, said, here's our bias information, and here's the PDF if you want to download the results and see that we're on the up and up. But I think the trustworthy partners, I feel like that bar has been raised.
It absolutely has. And one of the things that we're finding is that every customer, we're going through the same type of due diligence questions. They have an AI committee that's asking the same questions. They have a data and privacy committee that's asking the same questions. They have an accessibility. So we've had all of these like one-off kind of primers, security primers, and information that we're sending based on PDFs. And one of the calls I made recently was like, we just need a trust center, a separate part of our website that anybody can access, that lays out all of these questions. And it's getting into the nitty gritty, but for example, most companies are used to being the data processor. Well, Plum is like LinkedIn. The individual owns their own profile, and they're simply giving permission to the company to see it, and it moves with them throughout their career. And so it's a different arrangement where we're actually the processor in most cases. And so even just educating companies on it. And what we found, we've heard feedback from practitioners that we're part of a membership group. And one of the feedback is that a lot of practitioners are trying to learn about these details because they have to then go and educate their AI committee or their privacy committee or their accessibility committee. And a lot of the sales reps are like, oh, don't worry about that. And no, so we're trying to be proactive in saying, hey, like, how do we make it so that we're able to, in as easy as possible way with visuals, explain the consistent answers that we're having to deliver for every RFP, but how do we get ahead instead of somebody asking us for it, or instead of them passing it through, can we basically educate our buyer on these evolving policies and how we're staying ahead and going above and beyond and staying compliant, and how can that be part of not just the sales and marketing language, but that building out that trust center. And so we're recognizing this is a key part of the buying process, and it should be. And we're trying to get ahead and saying, how do we just educate people rather than waiting until the lawyer's on the phone that doesn't understand anything about the business use case? How can we start to get every party that's part of this decision on the same page in terms of how the data is being used, why, and how we're staying compliant?
Nice. That's great. The portability of the results. Um, I've talked on this show and to anyone who will listen about the necessity of that as we think about improving, I guess, taking cues from what's going on in Europe to a degree, but how do you, this is my data, it's consistent from an efficiency standpoint. I mean, every other employer should be happy to do that because it saves them so much time. And then the candidate not only has the ownership, but they can selectively share
Yeah.
results of different, well, ideally, results of different assessments if you have something else that you want to, test for. And it just seems like you're the only vendor I know of that has actually proactively sort of done that on the candidate's behalf. And it just seems like, you shouldn't need some over-engineered solution, blockchain-based, whatever, to do all of that. I mean, I don't know what necessarily the answer is more broadly, but I do love the fact that you guys have made that available.
Thank you. It's really interesting because for us, it wasn't even a question. From day one, the candidate had to they own their own profile, like personality.
Right. Exactly.
Like you own your own personality. An employer could never own that. And the whole idea was to have one assessment regardless of the role, regardless of the company. So it would have to live with you. So for us, it was a no-brainer, but we understood how disruptive and different it was, especially a decade ago. And GDPR actually helped because we would every conversation have to convince them that this was the way forward, but we were so different than everyone else. There was a lot of pushback. When GDPR came out, they're like, oh, great. We don't have to worry about that. You control it. If a user wants to delete their account, which they're allowed to do through GDPR, great, you have to be responsible for that. So it actually took a lot of the burden off of the company. And so we found that the last 5-6 years, companies don't push back on that in general, and that they're much more open to it. But there is still that education component because we go into these privacy and policy committees and these different DPA agreements and things like that, and we always have to educate them because they're not thinking about it from that lens, but once they hear about it, they're like, it's a relief. So we have the buy-in. We've had one very conservative bank that the users, like the HR department, loved the fact of, hey, if these candidates have already applied to our competitor, who is a customer of ours, and then they can just go and apply to their bank, they wouldn't have to retake it. Like, they saw it as a huge benefit, but the requirements in security are getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
Okay.
And, there was a little bit of like old thinking around, no, we want to be our own airtight box with nothing moving beyond it. And, not everybody's ready, but I do think GDPR has helped. And then again, like, this is how it works with LinkedIn. Like, it's not that novel of an idea, but for some reason it still has stayed novel in assessments and other type of profiles that we see in the industry.
Well, it's also interesting that I understand what you're saying, like in terms of, LinkedIn, it's there, anyone can go and see your profile. Yet, for whatever reason, they still ask for your resume so that they can have a very, polished,
Yeah.
two-dimensional version.
I mean, LinkedIn is about what you've done historically.
Yeah.
We're the concept of LinkedIn, but more about what you could do if given the opportunity. And that's really what AI is doing to the labor force. It is going to be so much more about, hey, you've never done this before. How will you perform? I can't tell based on somebody's resume in marketing if they're going to be great in marketing at my company, because if they're doing the same thing that they've done for the last 15 years, it's not going to fly. And even if they said, oh, I took these 3 micro courses on AI, that's still not going to tell me. But if I can see that they're innovative and that they're adaptive and they're good communicators and they're good at working with the team and execution, and I can see that they're naturally motivated and driven by innovation and can adapt quickly to change, then I'm like, okay, like I don't care what they like. Yes, 15 years, I'm sure it's going to help to some extent. But what I really want to know is, are they going out every day and educating themselves on the latest and greatest
Right.
AI tools and forcing themselves, not forcing, enjoying experimenting
Yeah.
and trying out these new tools, because those are the things that we need to start bringing into organization to get ahead of our competition.
Right. And otherwise they would have to, in some ways, unlearn some of the
There,
legacy.
this is a whole other thing. We know in the industry that there's been this huge decline in early talent hiring. It's a consistent trend. We're seeing, unemployment rates go up, and a lot of the admin early career type roles have been some of the first to be kind of hit at
Yeah.
this exact moment. And I think it's short-sighted, because the reason why we had lots of early careers was because we can pay them less. Well, if you have somebody with 15 years experience and somebody with 6 months of experience, but the person with 6 months of experience, which is maybe half the cost, is able to learn really quickly and use a lot of tools and have a clean slate, so they're not unlearning and they're doing something better, give them a year or two, they're going to far outpace the other person. So I think we're going to maybe see the pendulum swing back to less expensive early careers, but that have used these tools to catapult their
Yeah.
careers. Not everybody, but I think that there's a little bit of an over rotation happening right now with, not spending time on campus hires or doing internships, or not spending the time to grow the next generation of people that will come up through the ranks of your organization. It's a short-term cost that I think is a little misguided.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. So when we talk about those skills, I mean, I guess I do, results of your Plum assessment aside, is you really got to think about the AI skills that show that you're innovative, you're curious, you've got a learning mindset, etc., combined with the actual durable skills that no matter how AI sort of advances and becomes more capable, those are the fundamental skills that will literally endure.
The durable skills will point to all of those AI adoption
Okay.
skills that you need. They're one and the same. And, it doesn't matter what framework you're using, if it's, a technology adoption curve like, early adopters, and then, fast followers and laggards. We've been playing around with a framework around really identifying the people that try, meaning they will throw 100 pieces of spaghetti against the wall and see what 3 stick. And then the second they find those 3, they'll pass them on to the people that will persist and execute and figure out the processes around them, and turn that into the new status quo. And then by the time it becomes status quo, you can go to the people that are now, will normalize it as the everyday thing. And then you've got influencers at every stage that will evangelize and get everybody motivated to try these new things and to change the processes. And so there's a role for everybody. It's just, are you placing people in the right role? And there's fascinating things like, I'm somebody that believes heavily in the importance of AI. We've had to use it in our own organization to be much more productive and punch well above our weight using AI. But I use AI, but I don't use it as much as my chief product officer. Like, he is spending 60, 80% of his day. He's the person throwing 100 pieces of spaghetti on the wall. I'm the one taking the 3 and then,
Yeah.
using those consistently. And so, but if I wasn't championing it and putting resources towards it and focusing on that, then maybe it wouldn't have as much spread across the organization. So everybody has a different role, but are we upfront about where people are best placed? Because if we take a one size fits all and have those laggards or those people that, are skeptical involved at the 100 pieces being thrown against the wall, that won't work. So all of this comes down to durable skills, which is why when people talk about AI adoption and they start talking about those perishable skills like prompt engineering or Python, like they're missing the point. It's going to come down to the durable skills as to what people have, that innovation and curiosity and learning agility and all the execution and all these other things that play a huge part in that adoption of new technology.
Yeah, I think some of that tracks for what I think about in terms of, well, even the concept of AIQ, right? Yes, you can take my AI readiness assessment, you can get a score and a breakdown of that score. Um, but this isn't just about what you can do for yourself. This isn't about individual productivity. We work in teams, we work in departments, divisions, lines of business, larger organizations. And so we've got to think about how we can sort of empower people to lean into those durable skills, but think about it take a systems thinking approach to it and say, how do I sort of actually redesign this work? How do I almost disrupt myself and what my team does, and how do I rethink how
biggest
we add
biggest
value?
part is, I mean, right now, having just judged the pitch fest for HR tech, one of the cohorts, so many AI inventions are just about speeding up a broken system.
Yeah.
It's that how quickly can, I think you said something early about a revolving door.
Oh, yeah. Well, because if you haven't fixed a broken process, then you shouldn't be automating it yet, let alone making it into some agentic
Yeah.
autonomous process. And so, yeah, it's just, hiring the wrong people faster is not helping anybody.
No. And so I do think that AI, the biggest opportunity is to wipe that slate clean and
Yeah.
say, if I was to design this from scratch today and with the best possible outcome based on the best evidence and research and science that we have, how would I design this from day one? And I can tell you, durable skills are not part of the conversation. They're an afterthought, and they would be the main character in building the solution from the ground up. And even when I think about beyond HR tech, and I look at what's happening with LLMs and us interacting with Gen AI through, a Chat GPT or a Gemini, it's really great advice that we can get around what's out there. So if I want to give you feedback, I can learn about all the different frameworks for feedback, but it's generic advice. It doesn't know what you need to hear in order for feedback to land the right way for you. It doesn't know me and what's going to be most authentic for me to deliver it and for me to be mindful of maybe my own biases or my own strengths and areas that drain me that may influence how I deliver that. Once you understand the durable skills of myself and you, and then you layer on the knowledge from the world, and these different frameworks that exist, that's where you truly have personalized, advice and guidance and coaching. And we can be more human because we can personalize our interaction for how people need to actually receive it. But right now, without those durable skills data, you're just getting generic one size fits all advice. And so I'm excited to see, as we use AI in our lives, how do we get the durable skills data layer as part of that foundation of truly supporting the humans that AI is supposed to be supporting.
Yeah. The the other thing I wanted to ask you was around candidate use of AI. I've talked to other assessment vendors in the past who've talked about, well, you know, we can try to detect it, we can try to deter it, but ultimately sometimes we need to think about what it is we're trying to assess, and can you redesign an assessment to reduce any incentive for trying to
Yeah.
have a co-pilot filling it out on your behalf, or your digital twin
Yeah.
taking this test for you. Is this do people do that with a Plum assessment?
So we, from the day one, wanted to ensure that we had an assessment that was fake proof, that you couldn't game or fake it. Because I mean, even before AI, even if it's an assessment for an employee, we all have a self-enhanced bias. We all think that we're better than we are in most things.
Yeah.
So a lot of assessments in the past have been from a scale of 1 to 5. How good are you at this? And most people are like 4 or 5 for everything,
Yeah.
right? So we needed to design something from day one that was fake proof and validated third party that it could be fake proof. And so the personality component of the assessment is forced choice methodology, meaning there's no right or wrong answer. You're constantly having to prioritize what's most like you and least like you. And you do it with all positive statements. So they're all positive. There's no right or wrong answer. And with all negative statements, which a decade ago, people were really uncomfortable by, but that's where you truly get to, okay, what are your trade-offs? What are you really willing to do? And so we've really made sure that the personality component is robust and it's being matched towards, thousands of possible matches. And you're always sacrificing something because it's forced choice. And you don't know that if something you're sacrificing is actually something that may have been important for that match criteria that the employer is doing. So it's double blind, like you have no idea. And that profile lives with you for a year. You can retake it if you want. It's not necessary if you're older than 23, but you know, you can't just keep retaking it. That is about saying, hey, you may be a 33 for job A, you may be a 99 for job B, and you're going to be happier, more fulfilled, you're going to perform better in job B. So we've really ensured kind of that element, that main part of the element was taken care of before. The conversation about candidates cheating, it's very interesting. We definitely had that come up in the pitch fest earlier today with different companies that were trying to address it. What's really interesting is that whatever tools the employer is going to use, the candidate's going to use the same one, and vice versa. So there's really a question of, like, if we're going to have avatars interviewing candidates, the avatar knows about the business. Well, why can't you were talking about your AI proxy? Why can't your avatar as a candidate sit in that interview and educate the company about you on your behalf so that they have enough information to then go to the live interview? Like there's a little bit of like bot against bot that is going to be emerging, which is another part of durable skills, I think, are so critical in this because they are 4 times more accurate at predicting on the job performance than past experience. And when we get into the applications, if they're still focused on tell me when you did this in the past, we're still missing the point. We're really need to be focusing on who is going to excel in a brand new role if given the opportunity. And maybe the question is how long will it take for them to be fully onboarded?
Yep.
And is that proportional with the other requirements? Like if they need to be in office, then there is a question of like, do they live in or willing to relocate? Like there are some tactical things that are still important, but you want to lead with who's going to be the rock star, who's going to outperform. And a lot of that, you don't need a lot of the things that people are trying to avoid from happening. But yeah, I think in general, like when you've shortlisted down to out of 1,000 candidates down to the small handful you're going to look at, then yeah, do you want to make sure that those people are real? For sure, but the people that are surfacing aren't like the people that are gaming the system are really familiar with how to game the perishable skills component.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to they're very likely not going to end up in your shortlist because they're trying to game the other system that doesn't focus on durable skills. So the chance you're even going to get those is like very, very reduced.
Got it. Yeah, I've been trying to move past the resume, so that the whole AI generated resume or AI enhanced resume versus an AI generated job description. To me, that seems like an entire step you could just skip.
Yeah.
And so, in that sense, AI versus AI, we are sort of just shifting it to the next stage of the funnel. If we are doing the basically at least a recruiter phone screen kind of thing, bot to bot. But I will tell you, the last couple of recruiter phone screens that I've had as the candidate, they were pretty robotic in the form, and they were following a script. So there's actually like they could have it actually could have one of them was a voice only call. It was not a Zoom. For all I know, that could have been an AI, and they didn't tell me. Like that's how the conversation flowed. And
Were you the employer or the candidate?
I was a candidate.
Yeah. So it's like, how, and I mean, like, if they're using AI on their end, they're not an actual real person. It disincentivizes you
It was a
as well.
45-minute
Are you
call.
kidding?
No, 45 minutes
It,
of my time and
and zero, or and maybe zero of the recruiter's time, because it was maybe there's a lot of being on the floor. Like, there is a lot of belief that, like, if this is about deeply understanding you and then some qualifying questions, understanding your durable skills, you can't infer those. You need to assess them, and then you want to verify them. I don't see a reason why an agent, so somebody, that doesn't take up your time, can go and answer all those questions based on what you've educated. And if they still want to move forward, then have the in-person. But, like, if you want to replace the phone screen in an automated way for the employer, why can't the candidate have a phone screen? Because again, you should be verifying things like, if you need somebody to live in your area, is that a possibility? If you want to make sure they have a driver's license, like, these should be bare minimum things, because we should already understand the other components. They still qualify, then have the in-person, Zoom, whatever. And then the human, if you want a human to show up as a candidate, you better have a human as an employer show up.
well, part of this feeds into um, like if you were doing outbound sourcing for candidates, um, if someone came to my LinkedIn profile and said, I'm requesting your Plum assessment and permission to scrape your social exhaust, through LinkedIn or whatever, I would gladly do that. And here's a link to my digital twin, which I could have easily given to them.
It'll answer questions for you. It'll go deeper into explaining all this.
Yeah. So like in the last example, um, like they did outbound sourcing and they reached out to me. I did not apply. I didn't know the job existed. So you've already done your homework. I mean, you clearly looked at my LinkedIn profile. You saw the work that I've been doing. And it just seems like, I'm happy to give you all these other pieces of information so that you can help ensure that this is um, a mutually beneficial and logical match, right? And so we could skip the whole thing and then scale that to, Department of Labor level, employment. And I think the economic impact is tremendous. So if we can get out of our own way,
Yeah.
there's a lot that could be.
It's been really great talking to the U.S. Department of Labor about, they're trying to proactively think about how are they able to move people that are unemployed into net new jobs? How can they partner with industry to do that upskilling? But ultimately, before you're going to invest in that type of, let's train you to do something you haven't done before, you want to make sure it's going to be a successful ROI, which comes back to, like, I can ask somebody, what have you done historically? But if I'm trying to move more people into skilled labor, which is a big push right now in the US labor market of, let's put people back into skills trade. If I'm going to have to train somebody on welding, which is going to be a very great salary and it's going to be a lengthy process, I want to make sure that that person's going to succeed and it's going to be a win-win, because the last thing you want to do to the individual is put them through a whole bunch of training and then they're not going to be good at it. They're not going to stick. It's not going to be something that they want to do. And it's a big waste to the economy. So there is this whole idea of, what problem are we actually trying to solve?
Yeah.
And if it's about putting people into roles where they're going to outperform and stay longer, then let's do a work back. Are we, like, do we need some of these old tools and old measurements, and are they serving the ultimate purpose? And I think that is having the courage to reinvent the process instead of getting stuck in cheating or not cheating. I mean, I think there's real risks of fraud, don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of those examples are where things are, um, that they've been designed to be incredibly gameable and they're not taking the time to actually verify that they're dealing with a human before they start exchanging payroll information.
Right. Yeah. Well, that
I
makes
mean,
sense.
when you rush to, hey, I want to start paying you for doing this job, and we've never really ever communicated beyond this very robotic exchange, then yeah, you're leaving yourself open for somebody collecting a paycheck and not doing the work.
Yeah.
But so let's put our time in the right areas and not getting caught up on the wrong areas.
Absolutely agree. Caitlin, thank you so much for taking some time.
Thank you. It was
Great,
great to have a conversation with such a like-minded individual
Yeah.
who's trying to champion for the same kind of change as we are. So thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
I love it. And congrats again on your new award for
Thank
role
you.
model. It's awesome. And hope you have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.